questions here, 3 or 4. I just want to ask you again to log into the system. Event 360 is the Wi-Fi. It's not password protected, so you can log in and watch a replay movie or anything like that. But also you can send us some questions. I'm gonna take them from over here. I've got 3 questions. The panel, you know the panel. Somebody can sit here? No, we're all. It's mine. It's mine. I can't sit down. Okay. So first of all, we have an interesting case here, and it's a question from somebody in the audience that has this particular problem. We have identified a hypo. Okay, we know somebody very bright, but we do not want to reveal to him that he's a hypo. Okay, we want to keep this quiet, so we're afraid he might ask for a raise or something. So we're just gonna keep quiet, but at the same time, how do we do the development process for this guy? Everybody knows except for him, just like in that Romanian saying with the husband and the village. So everybody knows, but we have to keep quiet and keep this guy totally blind. Is this like a normal thing to do? Is this like something you would recommend?
I know how to answer that question because I don't do it that way.
You do that?
No, I wouldn't do that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we had long discussions about it, and I don't know how this can be done, because basically when somebody is a hypo, they also share the responsibility for that development. What we say in our organization is, you can do the job, you can be a great contributor, we're going to appreciate you for what you do. If you want to become a hypo, it means that you have a big aspiration. So we expect a lot from you, and you should expect a lot of other things and responsibilities to land on your shoulders. So I don't know how this can be made, really, without telling the guy.
I would just like to add, because I share the opinion of Vlad. Yes, it is an issue in many companies. Should we talk with them or shouldn't we? I strongly advise that yes, we should talk with them, but to use the company's language in order to communicate with them. And the most important thing is what Vlad already said, is to get their buy-in for their development. Otherwise, they wouldn't understand, and they won't even appreciate what we do for them, because they won't connect it with their development. But on the other hand, once you start these kind of development programs, you have to know also what you do afterwards. Because it's not only about the phase of development, which has to be continuous, but also what to do afterwards.
So you tell the guy, what if he asks for a raise or leaves the place because he's too bright for it?
Again, I think you have to take the language of the company when you talk with the person. And there are many types of saying this high potential thing to a person, and it should be adapted to the culture of the organization. There are some cultures, and we have subsidiaries, for example, in the world, and we talk with other HRs, where they say very, very openly, yes, you are a high potential. But there are also some subsidiaries in the world where, according with the culture of the country, they don't say it that open, but they somehow communicate with them when they talk about the development.
I'm going to echo a lot of this in just a little different perspective. What we know about great organizational cultures, and this is consistent, is they value the individuals. And if this person is high potential, this person needs to be told you are high potential. It is part of valuing that individual. And if that individual asks for a raise, so be it. In fact, I think you should, if you can't give them a raise, tell them why, and be open and be transparent. If you can, they probably deserve it, and that's okay too. But great cultures value people and let let them know they are valued. So I think that's what's ultimately important here.
Thank you. We also get this, you're a great contributor to this organization for everyone, not only for hypos. I mean, you have the other side of the story where you get a lot of hypocrisy from your evaluators. You're good, you're great, you're wonderful. How does that fit in with, should we only tell the great guys that they're great? Or girls?
That's an important issue in my view, because when you talk about high potentials, actually talk about a small percentage of personnel. Everybody is important in an organization. So I think we should concentrate a lot also on what it could be called something like the management of non-high potential, which doesn't sound well, but they are very valuable for the company. And this brings me to another issue. About the name of high potential, about the name of talents, about this word, which could be misleading. So it's not about very good and we don't care about. It's about talents in the whole company, because otherwise why they are in a company? They are all talented in some respects. And the ones whom we called high potential as the ones with the suitcase at their foot, as we always say in our company, who are ready to take a little bit more than the others and to take the hands of the company. So I think it's very important the management of the rest of the people too, because they are also contributing hugely. They are doing also the business. And for this, there are all kinds of systems, career paths, training programs, whatever.
I think one of the other things that's just broken is performance management. And that is, we all know that there's good and bad performers in every organization, but as a leader, we don't want to admit that we have poor performers on our team because it reflects poorly on our leadership style, right? Unfortunately, this isn't primary school football. Not everybody gets a ribbon or a trophy. And so the whole notion of you always have to be positive, it always has to be good news, I think it's time to debunk that myth that if you give people negative performance information, if you give them real feedback, that they're going to quit. In all reality, if they aren't willing to objectively look at their performance, are they really going to benefit your organization in the long run? I think that's the difference that we're seeing in successful organizations, differentiating between high potentials and high performers, because you will have people with very good performance that are going to remain at a certain level. That's as far as they're going. You do have to find ways to continue to develop and motivate them, but it's not by just telling them that they're a high potential, because in reality they're not.
So actually the leader might be the person that can also give negative feedback?
Absolutely. I would just add that one thing, which is that we have people who are coming, saying, I would like to be a high potential. And here I'm thinking what Roberto Goizueta from Coca-Cola Company was saying, which was that, many people want my position, but nobody wants my job. So what we're trying to do is to actually explain to them what are the implications. Are you ready to move abroad, okay, and work on 1 year, 2 years assignments? Let me think again. Okay, so a lot of we just try to make it very clear to them what are the implications of actually being a hypo, beyond just the position, but also the responsibilities of that.
I'd also like to just chime in on that as well. I think there's a difference between giving negative criticism or feedback. I don't just go to someone and say, well, by the way, you're stupid. I hope you get over that. Instead, what we need to do is
I had a boss just like that.
I think we all have.
It worked. I mean, I believed him. I tried not to be stupid. It really helped me a lot.
Yes, I listen to my wife. She says that. I think we find that great leaders can deliver constructive feedback, what we would call negative feedback, but they also show you optimism of a path you can go down to get better. And that is the difference in a great leader. Yes, you sit down and say, here are areas where you're not performing as I would expect. But let's talk about how you can get there. Now, some people just aren't going to work out, and frankly, one of the problems we have in leadership is we don't get rid of people soon enough, and that's what a lot of the research shows too. But give them an optimistic pathway to get better, and then you can deliver the negative feedback.
And hold on, one echo is why does it matter that we don't get rid of them fast enough? Remember, leadership is about building an effective team. When there's people on your team that you're supposed to be working with that stink, what are you doing? You're going to look at the leader and say, what's wrong with you? And that's going to impact leadership effectiveness. So you have to confront performance issues, and the whole notion of the whole positive psychology of just focus on your strengths. Again, that's doing nothing but generating more harm in the long run within organizations.
Thank you.
Listen to my colleagues. Actually, I was thinking at something which is very practical. We have this development training. We have leaders who give feedback, etc. But we have also the high potentials or some other good persons that are developed, and they go to trainings, they go to all kinds of programs, and they do this action plan or development plan, very personalized. There is also a difference how many persons out of these who are doing this personal development plan, they go to their boss and they say, listen, boss, I don't know if you saw in my evaluation that I have these weak points or whatever, but I just discovered some new ones. But if you talk about development, actually you talk about the courage, the guts, really to go to work on them, to do something better. So it's about what we all said at the beginning about the responsibility of taking your life in your hands and really to take the responsibility of being a hypo.
Now, Mr. Hart, you had a very interesting slide where you crossed some of the politically correct expectations from a leader, and you're proposing the humble model. And aside from the book, is there any other leader that is actually willing to go humble by its own instinct?
Actually, what we find is the great leaders are naturally humble. And in fact, there's what they call the great paradox that happens as we grow, because we could not get to where we get, and I shouldn't say we, great leaders don't get to where they get unless they have ego. They have to believe that they can do the job. So they have to believe in themselves. But there's a paradox, this trade-off that happens. The great leaders go through that level, and all of a sudden it's not about them. They have to have confidence. That's different than humility. They have self-confidence. That is different. I can believe that I can do the job, but I also really want us as a company to do better, and I believe in the people on my team and want to develop them as well. So it's not about me anymore. So I think the great leaders naturally break through that barrier and become humble and really believe in the people around them. And so you see it every day. And in fact, we oftentimes don't hear about them as much because they don't make the news as much. The ones who make the news are the big, ego, charismatic leaders, and oftentimes they flame out very soon.
Okay, I've only seen the flame out version until now. So I'm yet to find the humble version. So I found it very interesting because we have, not in HR obviously, but in the public perception, we still kind of think of a leader as the person that follows the alpha male paradigm. The guy that can actually lead the pack to the kill. So suddenly, the pack is more important. What happens if the pack kills the leader, the humble leader?
But humility is not weakness, and that's a great an understanding that it is not quite true. Humility is different than weakness. You have a great inner strength, a great professional will, but it's not about you. So that's where the humility is. And you're right, a lot of them have the big egos. They can still be alpha males or alpha females.
I'm into alpha females.
But the idea is that humility is not weakness. In fact, what we find about the great leaders is they have incredible inner strength. And they know how to lead a team. And the team is there because of that leader, and they are held together because of that leader. So they do not naturally turn upon a leader who is humble.
Yes.
Give you a real world example. Gordon Bethune, former CEO of Continental Airlines, which became United Airlines in the States. Decorated naval veteran, was a mechanic in the United States Navy during Vietnam, served on board an aircraft carrier, became a mechanic at Continental Airlines, worked his way up, became CEO because he was a leader of the people. And not only was he a mechanic, he was also rated as a pilot. Turned Continental around from bankruptcy and made it actually the most admired airline in the States. Prior to the merger, he got into a fight with two board members. One was from the Texas Pacific Group, another one from another large financial organization. They were all about cutting costs. His point was, we've become admired, our customers are loyal, and our troops, our people love us because we haven't followed other airlines in charging extra for everything and taking all the amenities out of air travel. He made a deal. He said, I'll resign as CEO if you quit the board. And his point was, and yes, he was a large personality. Yes, he was a great leader. But his point was, I care more about the airline. I care more about the people here than I do about the three of us being in control of the organization. So from a humility standpoint, from a doing the right thing, he saw that as the best solution. He gets off, he steps out, and these two gentlemen resign. They did, and the airline has survived.
That's a nice story. On the other hand, you have Michael Dell saying, I want this company back, don't care about it, I just want it back for me. 9 or 10-year-old boy attitude. Yeah. Okay, going back to questions. Thank you very much for the questions. They're piling in. We've got maybe 2. No, 3. And another 3 or 4 here, so don't be shy. Well, first of all, I'm going to go to Alice Stödler from USMC Group. Mr. Bog is invited to state his opinion on the decision of the new CEO of Yahoo of summoning the employees to the office, to the actual office. So people get to work in an office. Don't work from outside. I want to see you here doing actual stuff. Is that a new attitude that the Generation Y will be able to confront?
I heard about this one during the break. Actually, somebody else asked me the very same question. I would go back to Ken's presentation about the personality of the leader, which is really defining leadership. I don't think that there was real data behind this decision. I think it is rather a doubt that that person actually has about himself that is reflected then in the company.
Well, he just likes company. He felt alone. Yeah. No readers, no nothing. So there you go. No traffic.
I think they will.
But at least we'll have some employees at the office.
I think they'll have to face the results, of that decision pretty soon, because that's a very similar organization to Microsoft from that perspective. Very young people, very independent, very autonomous. IT guys tend to be even more autonomous than their own generation fellows. So I think that they're going to face an earthquake there.
By the way, about the Generation Y, this is my question. Looking at your presentation, I noticed something a bit strange. It looks as if these Generation Ys, they don't want to be bosses. They don't want to be leaders because that's going to eat a lot of time of their life and they don't think it's worth it.
Well, I think that as long as they find their passion, it's absolutely worth it going for it. If they didn't find their passion, their respective job, I don't think they will want to be leaders. Anyway, they're probably going to continue looking for their passion, for the zone.
I think there are lots more interesting passions than actually running a company.
Yeah,
do you agree with that?
For many people, but for some, running a company is probably the passion.
Okay. So our Generation Yers, they have enough people to actually run the show after we're gone?
I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure that they will. Yeah.
Okay. Other stuff here. difference between Hagen's view of leadership and Bass and Volio transformational leadership. I feel like in college again. Who wants to take this? For Ryan.
I'll plead ignorance to
Who Bass and Volio is? To my knowledge, it is like, I think it's a brand of I don't know, Bass and Volio.
If the question's more on transformational leadership of let's create leaders, let's transform people, versus our view. I mean, our view is personality is personality. You are who you are. If you want a different personality, you need to start over and get new parents. So from that standpoint, personality doesn't change over time. What we do is we change behavior. So what we do is we help people understand what are my strengths, what are my challenges, and then how do those fit the given situation that I'm in? Where do I need to be more flexible, more adaptable? Where do I need to start doing things? So all our development planning is focused around things to start doing, stop doing, and keep doing. Does that make you a different individual? We don't think so at the core. What it does is it changes the behaviors around you. It changes the way that you may be temporarily interacting with a situation. But in the long term, you go back to what's comfortable. Because people are inherently lazy and selfish, and we don't like to work very hard. So again, it's more about developing key strengths, using those to minimize the shortcomings that we all have. As Jared will be talking about this afternoon from a toxic leadership perspective, it's very difficult oftentimes to not only identify, but then actually to develop people with certain characteristics as leaders.
Thank you. Another question from Mrs. Nicoleta Petre. Leader, it should be a standard profile no matter what the industry. But the reality is different. We can notice in different industries, different leaders' mindset. So what do you think about this, and how can we explain the discrepancies? Are they universal leaders or dedicated to industries?
One thing is we do notice differences within certain industries. That doesn't mean it's the right way. Oftentimes what we do in certain industries especially is we promote people who are just good performers at what they do within that industry. And oftentimes they have not been promoted because of their leadership skills, but instead of their performance skills for certain tasks. And I have found that to be prevalent in certain types of industries. And that generates a different leader for that type of industry. And I could go back to many of the manufacturing industries within the United States, et cetera, versus the services industries. And in fact, one that I was in years ago, which was CPA firms, accounting firms. They had a very different leadership style, actually very negative leadership style, because they promoted on your ability to be an accountant, not on your ability to be a leader. And so a lot of industries have generated that kind of different leadership just because of the way they promote.
Another very interesting point about this is everybody wants advice on how to succeed as a leader. Ali Stirsha, please give some pieces of advice for a newcomer in a company appointed to the highest leadership position. Get the best parking spot. So people will know you're the boss. If you fail at that, you're done. Really. Nobody will respect you if you don't get the best parking spot. Over to you. Sorry. That was just entertaining.
I'd say my best advice is the answer is always out there in the organization.
You're cheating.
No,
You're cheating.
It's
You're
really
getting
out
away
there.
from this question.
All it takes is actually having the ears to hear the solutions. They're all out there.
Let's say you take over from Baldwin or Microsoft. What would you do first?
Look for the answers in the organization. They're all out there.
Oh, come on. Come
Well,
on.
I think you make a great point, and that is every transition into a different organization is unique. It's what are the core values and drivers in that organization? Where do I need to be listening to what those are, and how do I need to respect those so that people won't think that this was a bad decision, or I'm here just to turn the organization upside down. Let's look at Yahoo. The reaction to that was actually quite negative in the States. we don't know what's going to happen. I agree. I think we've got to look 6, 9, 12 months down the line. But it's going in with your eyes open, your ears open, and typically with your mouth closed for those first 90 days to build the relationships. Because if you are listening, you'll see what the keys to success are in terms of integrating into a new organization.
Any other?
No, actually, it's almost the same
I like that.
thing. Something which I can add more, not to repeat what was said, so to listen first, is that I would look also at the context where the leader is coming, because it can come in the company in crisis, it can come in a company in development, or it can come just because the leader was changed. So it's also the context where he comes, but I strongly believe also that the first rule is really to listen. And something that probably is valid in some organizations is also how the leader was prepared before he got into that organization, if it is the case on internal mobility.
Right, there's a question for you, Adela. Have you made changes in the formal framework of your activity, taking into account the pyramid of the employers dominated by Y and women?
We have a principle in Société Générale, generally speaking, which is called diversity. And that means that everybody has equal chances, women or men, old or young, etc., all the principles. On the other hand, on a practical way, when you see the difference in the company from development phase to crisis phase, year 2009, and when you have this pyramid of age with a lot of women and a lot of young persons, I looked also at the university degrees, and we have almost 90% people with university degrees. If you translate this with a business dictionary, actually you talk about a lot of people who have ambition for their life. Because they are women and they are young, they did also babies. That's another reality. So all at once in the policies, to answer to your questions, yes, we did some changes because we had to work in a different way the budgets, FTEs and money, but also we have to look also in a different way all the career paths and what means reintegration when the moms come from their maternity leave. So we did these kind of changes in order to adapt and to be always in equilibrium for what the business is wanting from us, the HR, but also what the budgets are. And of course, translating in all the nice things like talent management.
Right. Another question is, HR versus Hogan, can you think of an example of successful leadership that stands for Hogan View as being the correct, effective leadership approach? Some people want case studies.
I mentioned my favorite, which is Gordon. A couple others that do come to mind. I think what you have is you've got effectiveness in quite a few of your manufacturing environments. And so and actually he's moved on from manufacturing. His name's Mike White. He's an individual that now runs DirecTV, which is the largest satellite provider, home satellite provider within the United States. He came from PepsiCo. Again, his whole goal was to build a team. And so at both PepsiCo and then at DirecTV, he spends the majority of his time interacting with not just his direct reports, but even their direct reports. And it's not an interaction of, what are you doing for me today? It's, how can I assist you? How can I help you? Mike talks a lot about servant leadership as well. And so for him, it's not about the position. It's about building an effective team. It's about equipping them. And it's about evaluating their performance of how are we doing against our competition and others in the industry. So I think there's quite a few examples out there in terms of different leaders that exemplify leadership by example, leadership by building a team versus it just being about themselves.
I've been with the Coca-Cola company for 13 years, so when I hear an example involving Pepsi, I sort of
Cringe.
I feel like giving a counterexample. So that's going to be a Coke counterexample. When the Coca-Cola company celebrated 100 years, they said, okay, so we did the first 100 years, where are we going to go next? And the way in which they decided the direction was actually by listening to the organization. That was exactly the exercise they did. It's a very good example for HR leadership as well, because Cynthia McCabe, who was the VP Human Resources at the time, had her role, and she was actually instrumenting everything and making it possible. What they did actually was to literally lock in a room for a week a few hundred people from throughout the organization, throughout the world, all levels in the organization, and literally interrogate them about the organization. What they realized was that everybody believed in the future of the company, everybody loved the company, loved the brand, and everybody thought that Coke deserved an even better future. And they have started to design the principle of that together. They have started to design all the values together. And this is why this turned actually in a very good example of values that are created in an organization and work, because they have been created by the people in the organization. They have been created by the organization itself. And therefore, when they launched what was called the Manifesto for Growth, in the organization, everybody resonated with it, because everybody's voice was heard and everybody's voice was represented into the Manifesto for Growth. And I think that this is probably going to become an MBA study case soon, because it really works and really transforms the organization.
Right. Another question: what makes you, and each of you, a great leader? Strong waypoints, improvement. From Emilia Constantinescu, Editia, Pronav, Galați. It designed ships. Great job. Great. I'd love to design a ship every day. That would be my hobby. So, SWOT analysis individually.
I see all the men around me not taking the mic.
So ladies first, not difficult questions.
Yes, so difficult.
He spoke
No,
earlier
you should
when
They
you
were
grabbed
looking at
it.
me.
You should have
Can I say
grabbed the
that?
mic. Grab the mic. Grab the mic when you see it. That's a great leader.
Grab the mic.
Or you're humble. Okay.
I think something that brought me to have people around me who believe in me was that I gave them the chance to get to be developed, and also I kind of supported them in all the ways that I could. And I think something a leader, and I'm proud of saying this, and I have in the room some of my colleagues here who can even witness, is that in all my teams where I worked, I was more recommended by the team. And I think this is what, at the end, I don't know if I'm a leader. I don't want me to name myself like this. I just want to know that in all my career paths around me, I will have very valuable persons whom in some respects will be better than me, and taking into account my position as their coordinator, I can help them even more and represented them whenever I can with pride. So this is something that I hope I will always be able to do.
Okay, I'll translate in a very short. She is able to deliver a very short presentation on the company missions and values, and that will be the greatest leadership accomplishment for today. Now, you were cheating. We wanted to know what makes you a great leader, not the ability to talk about others in a very nice tone.
Actually, I would argue that that's what makes her a great leader. That's the point.
Listen, I mean, we're Romanians, we're thinking of great leaders as great warriors that are able to lead armies. And when you're leading armies, you don't talk, hey, I like you guys, I like you very much. How about you and the other guy beat the crap out of the army, of the enemy? No, they say, great leaders say, come on, let's get him. Let's kill him.
I can.
Okay, there you go. I got you there.
Once you arrive in a position, actually something recommended you. It was someone who believed in you. Doesn't matter if it's at an interview, people who employed you, my boss.
So you make
So
people
somehow I was
living.
good at something. On the other hand, what keeps you, and I really insist on this thing, it's not just the interview, it's not just the magic of changing something and someone who loves you in a, you know, at this discussion of choosing you as a chief of a team. It's what makes really the way, what keeps you there, and what recommends you as a reputation for the next job. And I strongly believe that, and this was my answer, something recommended me because I somehow arrived in some positions and keeps me there. But on the other hand, I talked more about my duty being in this position, because my duty is to raise some other people around me who at a certain moment in time will pay my pension. You talked about...
Don't look at me.
It's just the next generation. It's the generation that will really be able to lead the companies when we will go. So I don't want to talk about myself and to give the interview now and to talk about my CV. I just want to say what recommends me in the position where I am, and I think that's the job of someone who's leading a team. Meaning really to mean something for them on a daily life, but also what means in the future. So prepare them for the future.
Okay.
I would actually say, I don't know if I'm a great leader. I hope that I try every day to be one.
You run a school.
Yes.
So
we have a lot of people, a lot of students,
Yeah.
3,000 employees, 25,000 students. And so I'm in a leadership position. And what I try to do every day is prove that I belong there. And just try to work a little harder to prove that I belong there. I think another thing that I have learned, and again, we should not confuse this with weakness, is I absolutely cherish every person I come into contact with during the day. Absolutely. I don't care if it's somebody I am firing, and I have fired, I can't tell you how many people in the last 6 months. But I recall a story of a gentleman I was firing a few months ago, and he stood up afterwards and gave me a big hug and said thank you. Because I treated him with compassion and empathy, and I really cherished this individual. He just wasn't right where he was. And he needed something else he needed to do. It was not with us. And so I think as a leader, you have to respect, and I say cherish, those who are around you, and build that team and build that sense of respect. And that's what makes you effective. Is not all about you. It's about what you build as a team. So that would be my response.
Hey, you sure you don't want to be a divorce counselor, because there's a lot more money in that?
Divorce counselor?
Yeah, I mean...
I learned from experience.
I mean... the hugging thing, you know?
Now I can tell you what not to do.
I'll give it back to Ellen.
Right. Anyone else who wants to tell us why they're leaders? Vlad?
My reason is that I don't think that I'm a great leader. I think that I'm working on it, and I aspire to that. And I also think that it is, sometimes you are a great leader in some instances, in some projects, in some teams, and sometimes you are not. And I think it's about learning about it and about making sure that you have a team who will tell you when you crap. And I think I have here quite a number of my team members actually here, and I know that they would tell me if my presentation was crap, if my answers were crap, they would tell me. And this is something very, very important to me. I think that I wouldn't feel safe if I didn't know that they would tell me how I'm standing every day.
Okay, and Mr. Ramsey?
I completely agree with you. I mean, why am I a leader? I was standing there and could fog up a mirror, kind of the last guy standing. That's a joke. Anyway, no, I agree. It's about as a leader, never taking the position that I'm in charge and I'm a leader. It's being open to influence. Sometimes you don't like being open to that influence. I know I don't. But at the same point, it's important to listen. It's important to adjust strategy, because if you don't, you're gonna fizzle and fade. Second thing is, I think it's important to just always be surrounding yourself with actually people that are better than you in certain areas. And it goes back to the humbleness and just realizing that you can't do it all.
Right, there's a question from Cristina Rogoberta from Manpower, and it refers to the question we started with, if you remember. Does anyone remember that?
Yeah, do you pay hypos more?
Yeah. Okay, I was just checking. Want to see if we're an effective team here. The question is is that guy really that dumb as not to know his hypo? I mean, is there something we can keep away from him? I mean, maybe he has a mirror at home and he can look at his own, PowerPoints, and he can discover by himself that he's a genius. How can we actually keep that from himself, from knowing?
I think we answered again the question. I would only add one thing, which is that I think it is important for companies to also define which is the trigger off the program, because many companies make it very clear how you get on the program, but they never define how you get off the program. Does that happen annually through an evaluation or re-evaluation, or how exactly that happens? So once you become a hypo, it doesn't mean that you are going to remain a hypo forever. And this is something that companies need to consider.
Okay. There's a question here.
Hello, my name is Alex from Romanian Software. I have a question, if you don't mind. You all had great presentation, and I'd like to play a game. Let's say that you're the head board in a company. Right now, I'm having a job in this company. I'm saying a job because, from my point of view, the difference between a job and a career is the fact that at the end of the month, when you draw the line, a job equals the one which lets you the possibility to pay your taxes, and gives you a job equals just over broke, let's say. And you are having an opening for a job, which in my case is a career. You all discussed about what you're looking for in order to a person to hire you. But you all drew a line in which none of you, from my point of view, didn't say what I should do in order to get that job. How should I get noticed by you? And I would like to know what's that answer. Because, yes.
I will start by saying that we even have for many years this kind of internal slogan that we offer you not a job but a career. And the way we are attracting, or the way we are explaining to the new candidates, is really to talk about the future. So whenever we are in universities, or we are in fairs, or we are in different kind of occasions, we try to, as much as explicit as possible, to explain them the criteria to get in, but once they are in, what they can do for the future. At least in our group, we strongly believe in this internal mobility, functional, geographical, but really what means internal possibilities to grow from many respects. So I would say that actually it's about explaining all the systems that internally a company has in order to identify you and to develop you.
I see.
My answer would be twofold. So on one side, we have a system at Microsoft where you can actually go and look for any position in the organization. It's a career path tool. So basically go for any position that may be of interest to you, and you're going to see exactly what characterizes it and what are exactly capabilities needed for that position. You can then look at your position and see what are the gaps. And then the tools are going to help you define what you need to develop and how you can develop the missing capabilities. So that's one thing. Secondly, that's the other side of my answer, is how much energy is in you wanting that job, because I really believe in that energy, and I would absolutely admit, and I think this is the core of your concern when you ask the question. Companies tend to look at candidates from outside more positively than at candidates from inside, because obviously a candidate from inside is somebody whom you know very well on a daily basis, so you know all the faults, you know all the pitfalls, you know all the downsides of that person. While an external candidate is somebody that you've met for 1 hour, hopefully, impressed you very positively, and therefore, you have a more positive impression about that person. So I think that yes, companies need to look more at internal candidates more carefully, And I think that energy is really a predictor for success in the new job that you want to take.
I see. You also said that you made a study, Mr. Kent, that in 135 companies, right, about great leaderships. And you only find 11. So I find it really hard for an outside candidate to get in your company, to have a job in it, or a career, as I say. So basically, how do you find that guy? Because in an hour, it's really hard for you to find that guy, that one person.
I think part of it is what Vlad just said.
Yes.
And that is usually the great ones you find internally because you do know more about them. It's usually more than that 1 hour interview. I think Ryan said it earlier in his presentation. Too often, if you're hiring from the outside, it's like that first or second date. You know, everybody's on their best behavior and really dresses up and looks good. You know, and it's really after time that you learn what the true depth of the individual is. So usually you want to have a system in place to identify people with great skills, leadership skills in your own company and define that. It sounds like these folks do, whether it's with Microsoft or BRD or whomever. To your earlier point, to get noticed, what we find oftentimes is I think you have to take advantage of experiences. It depends on what level you are. If somebody's just coming out of the university and just starting, they're probably not going to become the CEO. So oftentimes it's just show up and do your job well, depending on the level. And then as you develop more and more experiences, it's taking advantage of those experiences and showing that you know how to pull a team together and be effective in a team, be a team player, then be a team leader, and just grow yourself and take advantage of experiences. And like I say, one thing that frustrates me is when people say, oh, I've been doing this job down here very well, so I should now be ready for this upper level administrative work. And oftentimes it's very difficult to say, you're very good, but you're not ready for this. And so I think it's also being patient and just developing those experiences.
I see.
Okay, and the last one, if there's no one that raises their hands now. Okay, there's another person there. There's something very, very short I want to introduce in between. And this relates to, I think, the situation when you're trying to look for a scapegoat. Who is responsible for development of a new leader? Direct manager, HR, or CEO? And who is responsible for the failure?
I strongly believe that all the HR processes are combined, manager and HR. I will give one example. An HR process, for example, is the evaluation within the performance management. So it's a process HR, done by HR, coordinated by HR, but at the end delivered by the manager and the employee. And I think a leader should be determined, should be identified, should be developed in a co-work manager and HR.
Yeah, I would add to that we believe it's the new leader's responsibility more than anything. The organization has to have the processes, the organization has to have the supporting structure. But as a new leader, if you're not dedicated to your own growth and development, then you're destined to fail. It's the old psychologist joke. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? One, but the light bulb really has to want to change.
What are the main differences between a good manager and a good leader? Wants to know, Manuela Georgescu or Coronescu. Okay. Good manager versus good leader.
The way I differentiate managers and leaders is management is usually about processes and leaders is more about people. Leadership is more about people. And just because somebody is a good manager does not necessarily make them a good leader. Great leaders know how to put together teams around a vision and a goal. Managers manage processes. That would be my own subjective interpretation.
Anybody else? Then the last question. what about, and this is very interesting, I really like this because in the media we often found those kind of, mostly I've worked with this kind of leaders. Developing leaders in very entrepreneurial companies with a strong leader of the one-man show type. And sometimes Roxana Ilie from Business Upgrades, she thinks they tend to annihilate, and what is that? Okay, kill the leadership and their high potential employees. Is that true? So, do you mostly see entrepreneurial companies, managers, or the startup and the entrepreneurial managers, owners or managers, are they actually being so strong, destroying every ounce of leadership around them, or not? Do they grow?
I'll just jump in and tell you something that happened a week ago. There was a gentleman who started a company in Atlanta, and he's worth millions and millions of dollars. And I was sitting at his home on his patio having a cocktail last week with two of his other leaders whom he is developing. This man is very wealthy and grew this company, and he is a tyrant. And he's a very negative, toxic leader. I love him as an individual, but as a leader, I do not have the greatest of respect. And what I have found is that he expects to develop other leaders in his own image. And so they were sitting around talking about how fun it is to create fear in their organization. And one gentleman was saying that every once in a while I just have to fire somebody so they stay afraid. That type of thing. And I have seen this too many times with entrepreneurs, especially in early stage companies where they expect the company to continue in their own image. And usually it takes some type of transformation to a different type of management and leadership for that company to truly be successful and grow beyond where that entrepreneur took them.
I would just add, there's very few companies, I bet you could count them on one or two hands, where they started as an entrepreneurial business where the entrepreneurial leader is still in charge if the business is still successful. It takes a different type of individual, because entrepreneurs have characteristics that what got them there are not going to keep them there. I think if you look at Andrew Mason of Groupon, the latest entrepreneur to have been removed by the board. Again, the arrogance of, I built this, I can do whatever I want. Well, actually, no, you can't. Especially if you're going to become a publicly traded organization, you're going to have a board, you're going to have shareholders. You can't do whatever you want. And there's a hard and fast line that I think a lot of entrepreneurs can't cross in terms of being willing to delegate or change level of control within the business.
I will translate also from the employee point of view what Ken said about this type of manager who is really a tough guy. And I'll translate it also within some survival mechanisms, because at the end, the employee who is within this type of company and who tends in time to act like his boss, it's actually looking at his boss and say, okay, what is he rewarding? If I'm also tough, or if I'm so it's kind of vicious circle when you stay in this kind of company. On the other hand, I think the companies, smaller or bigger, should encourage managers to be kind of entrepreneur. What do I mean by this is that they have to encourage their managers to assume risk, to look like at their department like it's their business, and really to do the best out of it. So I wouldn't say that it's not. I would say that it's good also to have this type of managers inside the company.
That'll be the HR's role, so to speak.
Again, I think it's
turning
combined.
them into
HR
entrepreneurs.
HR should have the right policies in order to coordinate very well and honest this type of policies. But on the other hand, it's a combined work with the managers, with all the managers, and of course with the buy-in from the top management. And I will explain why. The managers is the one who knows their employees, so they know best. It's not the HR. HR should ensure the right ethics, morality of all these politics in order that all these things are really alive and not just talks.
Thank you very much. If there's no other question, I'm just going to conclude the panel. There's going to be a little game we're going to play with Manuela Wojcila de la BNI. It's just 5 minutes before we take the lunch break, and then we will see each other here after, let's say, 30 minutes this time, not the original hour. Sorry about that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the panel, for your lovely discussion today. And Manuela, you have the floor.
Shall I continue in English or shall I switch back on? Okay, I will start in English to speak about a little bit. My name is Manuela Wojcila, first of all. I will introduce myself a little bit later because I will take the advice of Mr. Harmon and be humble and give some floor to the others. First of all, I would like to thank you to our hosts today. I'm not sure whether this is a very nice event, how much I have seen it. I'm coming from a different event. Thank you, Madalina, thank you, Juliana, and thank you, Tudor. Let's clap our hands for them. They put together a very, very nice event. I'm really glad and happy and honored to be with you today. And especially with such hard subject, leadership. That brings me back a little bit in time. I will not keep you a lot. At the statement which somebody from US, my mentor, told me, "My dear, you are a hypo." And I thought he's speaking about my figure. It was not about that. After 12 years of being a hypo and being transformed and being a leader and conducting a high multinational in Romania, I made a choice to become my own boss. And I started my own company, I have my own businesses, and one of them is BNI. What is BNI? BNI is an organization, is a large organization. I own the franchise for Bucharest, and I love it. It's my dream job. I do it with a lot of passion. Some of you who have seen me last year here, I have the same passion, even more. I am surrounded with a lot of people, and the rest of the minutes I will give to you. Why? Because I have a small game. It's a networking exercise. We are a lot of people here, and I'm sure that some of you would like to know some other people they haven't met yet. Isn't it? Who wants to meet other people? Come on, don't be shy. Thank you. Okay. All of you have in your own, how do you say, map? Map, okay. I'm speaking too much in Romania. This form, okay? Have you ever heard of bingo game? Okay? Bingo. Not yet. Okay, in order for you to meet other people you haven't met, you have to break the ice. You remember that a good leader has to go out of the comfort zone. We heard that today, isn't it? Okay? So what you have to do, go out of your comfort zone and introduce yourself to a totally new person. In the bingo game, you have some questions, 9 questions. Of course, that I will eat some of your lunchtime while you are eating in order to find new people you have never met and ask them these questions. Whoever is answering to you yes, please put them in the box, take the business card and make a note. Okay? The first form, which is fully completed, will receive a prize because of course I'm giving to you the opportunity to meet other people, but I'm also rewarding you for that. With what? With knowledge, which is contained by 4 books, which I will present later on, after the break. Thank you very much. My name is Manuela Wojcila. Please come with this form completed to me. Who brings it first wins the prize. Okay? Thank you. Have a nice lunch.
Yes, lunch now. We're going to meet just across the hall, okay? 30 minutes. Bon appétit.